Welcome to Let's Talk More with Rumel Gulzar. Today my studio guest is Vice-Chancellor of De-Montfort University. Kat, welcome to Let's Talk More. How are you doing?
Thank you very much. Really lovely to be here.
Welcome. Kat, before we start your career coming into Vice-Chancellor in De-Montfort University, heart of the Leicester, tell us a bit about yourself.
Yeah, certainly. So I grew up in the northeast of England, in Darlington, and it felt like a very provincial town up there. And my family were, in fact, my grandmother and grandfather, I saw a lot of them. We sort of lived with them at one point. My grandfather trained us in electronics and ran a TV aerial company. So he was kind of designing those and putting them in people's houses. And my grandmother did a lot of cooking and baking. Every time you went into her house, the Arga would be there with scones and biscuits and things like that. And my father was a insurance broker, again, a kind of self-made businessman, ran a small insurance broker. So I think, growing up, there was a sort of sense of, in a sense, a kind of smallness around what was happening, but also I saw people being kind of inventive and running their own businesses in a very small scale. But I certainly knew growing up in Darlington that I wanted to get out. I was really keen on being a ballet dancer, and so actually I did leave when I was 18 to go to London to take up a place at a professional ballet school to do that training. So I think for me, growing up in what felt like a sort of small northern town, I really wanted to sort of escape. But there's some things about coming from the north that I've always really liked. I think there's a real sense of, you call a spade, and used to that kind of straight talkingness that comes from there. And I've taken those sort of qualities with me, I think, throughout all of my professional career.
Everybody, most of us in childhood have a dream. What your dream was?
So yeah, my dream was to be a ballet dancer. And I think if not that, an architect. Those were the two things that I really wanted to do. And as I say, I took the ballet dancing really seriously from sort of about 13 onwards. That's really what I was trying to do. So my parents were very keen that I did A-levels and got those, but then I also was doing the ballet alongside that. And when I got offered a place at good ballet school in London, of course I was sort of ecstatic. Went to do that, and after the first year the school just said, look, you're never going to be better than second right from the back row the whole of your career, and you're not the sort of person that's going to kind of really feel that fulfilled by doing something like that. So we do think it's best that you move on. And from there I went to, it was heartbreaking at the time. It was the thing that I'd wanted to do for about 4 or 5 years. It was a huge disappointment, but also I think ballet school had really toughened me up, because I sort of describe it as a bit like doing national service. You basically went into that dance studio day after day and they would just tell you that you weren't good enough. So it was sort of soul destroying. I think they did literally try to sort of break you. And I think that kind of gave me a sort of sense of toughness as well. I've sort of needed to get on again in my career and not let setbacks get to you too much. It was a major, major setback. And from there, I kind of went and worked with a theatre company, someone who was teaching me at ballet school, ran her own company, and went on to do a degree in drama and English at Exeter University after a couple of years. So it took me a couple of years to get to university from sort of A-levels because of the ballet and things like that I was doing. But it did mean that when I got to university, I was really focused, and I'd been doing work in other sort of theatre companies and had a bit of that sort of taste what it meant to have professional values, and I think that really helped me.
I was reading earlier, you're the first person from your family who went to university.
Yeah, the first woman. I had an uncle who went, but certainly my parents never went to university. It was never ever expected. I wasn't, obviously I went to ballet school. I think the other idea I had if I wasn't doing that was to go and train as an architect. I did really like that sense of sculpture and shape, I think, that comes with architecture. But certainly there wasn't an expectation at all growing up that that's what was going to happen. And I think and talk a lot about the fact that my grandmother left school at 14. She became a maid in service. Her route out was meeting my grandfather, as I said, was, had done electronics and had, you know, a bit of those sort of professional skills. And then I look at my mum and my two aunts, her sisters. I think when they left school at 16, they were told they could either be nurses or teachers. And if they said, we don't really want to do that, then the other option was to be secretaries. And that's sort of what they got. I mean, they've gone on to do other things. My mother did an Open University degree later in her life. And, you know, my aunts have both kind of found sort of multiple careers that they've been successful in. But I still look at what I've had that the women in my family have never had. And I just feel a huge sense of gratitude, but also really think about the way in which education has transformed me. And I think that's what I try to pass on, that kind of value as well to students. And think about, you know, the students who come to DMU, that's the journey I want them to have. I want them to come in not necessarily knowing they were going to go to university, and then get from it the kind of qualities, experiences, skills that they need to go on and be successful.
What's your message to them, especially in the college or university, when they say to students, you're not good enough? What's your message to them, how we can tackle that word or issue?
I heard a story the other day, which was one of our first year students who was talking to me, and he was doing computer science. And he said, you know, I just want to speak to you for a bit longer. I was doing a tea session with a number of students, and he said, can I just walk out with you? And I said, yes, of course. And what he said to me is, you know, he had lots of different schools. His schooling wasn't that great. We didn't go into that. But he said when he started to do GCSEs at sort of 14, he really liked computer science. And he said to his teacher, you know, sir, do you think that I'll be able to do this as a job in the future? I'm really enjoying computer science. And the teacher turned around to him and said, no, don't even get that idea in your head. You'll never be able to do that. And here he is now as a first year undergraduate with us doing computer science. And he said to me, there isn't a day that I don't come onto campus and think, I'm at university, what can be better than that? And I think, you know, that story just stops your heart, doesn't it? That someone would turn around to someone who felt that they found something to do and someone had said, no, you're not good enough. I'm so pleased now that he's got the opportunity to come and do a degree, and he will go and be a successful computer scientist.
What's your hobbies?
I like running, and so yeah, I've done a couple of half marathons. I find those slightly too much now, but certainly doing 10 miles I quite like, and other runs, and I kind of like those runs, and I sort of see them a bit like a kind of cycle through life, because, you know, with any run you sort of set off a bit too fast, so you've got to find your right pace. Then it's kind of going okay, and then it gets a bit bumpy as you get tired, and then you see the end in sight and you pick yourself up. So there's a sort of journey in it I really like. Really like going to theatre and the arts, and just like being with friends and family as well.
What's your favourite book?
Oh, that's a good question. I think, what's the book that I turn to? I really like Wide Sargasso Sea, actually, which is the sort of invented story of the story behind Jane Eyre. So set partly in the Caribbean, but talking about the tale of the first Mrs. Rochester and how that is. And what I like about it is that it interweaves a kind of fiction before a fiction, which I think is quite a clever conceit behind that. But also it discusses issues around difference in there, which I think are really important.
As you graduated Professor of Drama, how you can describe that?
The reason I think I got caught up into drama is, and particularly I then got very interested in theatre directing, is for me that, and I did it for a few years after I graduated before I got more into teaching and ended up going into universities. But what I really liked about drama and that notion of putting on a play is that you're trying to work with a group of people. You've got to bring the best out in everybody to get to opening night, but work out as well a vision for where you're trying to take it. And I suppose in a way it's some of the skills that I have to use now, which is all about what's the strategy, vision for the university, like DMU. So I've set that as the empowering university. That's what we're trying to become, to empower our student, staff and key partners. But also you think then about how the team around you can facilitate them to be the best that they can be. And again, it's the thing that I'd like, you know, to talk to my staff about is, you know, how do we all enable each other to be the best we can be and enable our students to be the best that they can be.
Let's talk more. You move into 2021 as a Vice-Chancellor at De-Montfort University. Start with how you describe love of Leicester so far.
Yeah, so of course I joined in lockdown. So literally my first day of work was going home to hear Boris announcing that we were going into a long lockdown, and it was obvious a very long one at that point. And so, unfortunately, the first sort of 6 months, I have to say, weren't that brilliant, because although I was sort of here going into work, because I felt it was important to be on campus, even though we only had our health students, everyone else was having to work at home. I felt it was important for me to get a sense of the identity. But also it meant that everything was closed. There wasn't really any going out in the evenings. And it was probably only when it got to September that things began to open up, and I began to get more of a sense of what Leicester was. And I always sort of say now, there's two things that should have been on my job description in terms, or person specification when they were looking for a Vice-Chancellor, was that you had to like curry, and I do like curry a lot, and also Leicester's such a city about football as well. I've never really had that much to do with football. I've now watched a couple of games, so I'm beginning to understand a bit more about that. But I think what's great about Leicester are just the people. And I know people say that often about different places, but you know, there's such a openness and such a real sense that people want to make it work and make it better, but also a real diversity as well about, you know, people from, you know, all different walks of life that are here. And I think that gives a real richness to the city. It's a close-knit city. You can walk from one side to the other in half an hour, and, you know, you can easily get to meet people who are always interested in the ideas about what you're trying to do.
Now you're in a leadership role. How you can describe being a Vice-Chancellor in De-Montfort University?
I see it very much as my job to open up possibilities and opportunities, obviously to set the way that we can go as a university. But in terms of my sort of style as a leader, I'm really keen that it's one that's about dispersed and devolved responsibility. So, you know, very much the meetings that I have with my teams are about discussing how we will approach certain things, and then trying to find our way through often a very difficult set of things we're trying to do. But I then want to make sure that what we do is enable everyone to be able to be decision makers, knowing where we're going as an organisation, but make sure that those decisions are taken where it's appropriate to take them, rather than passing everything upwards, and to get people to that point where we all feel that we are part of the journey of creating the student experience, but also part of the journey of creating the research that we undertake as well. So, you know, that would be my sort of vision, really, is creating that community in which people feel that they know the part that they're playing and what we're trying to do.
Would you like to see change or bring the change to De-Montfort University next few years?
Definitely, I think there's quite a lot that we can do, and some of that's about, as I said, a kind of thinking about the sort of community we are and how that can change, because at the moment I don't think there is that model of people being able to be part of that decision making and understand where we're going as an institution. As I said, the strategy we've set since I've got there has been about the empowering university, so empowering our student, staff and partners to create a fairer society. I'm really keen that we contribute, we do already, but continue to contribute to the needs of Leicester, first of all, as a city, and the East Midlands as a region. So thinking about the skills that are needed to go forward, thinking about the ways in which we can apply our knowledge and research to help the community. And then beyond that, we've also got now De-Montfort Dubai, De-Montfort Kazakhstan. So thinking about how internationally we can also make sure that Leicester's known through an international lens as well by the work that we're doing. So I think there's a lot there of thinking about how we speak to the community and enable people within that.
Leicester is very diverse, Leicestershire and Leicester city and the county. Students come all over around the world. You think De-Montfort University are playing the major role to bring people together?
Yes, I do think so. I mean, we've got students that come from 130 different countries. And I think one of the things that we notice, so, you know, about 50% of our students are from ethnic minorities. Some of those obviously from the UK, some of them from overseas. But I think it does mean that because we've got such a large number of students, it does mean that they feel part of that, I think. Obviously, you know, if some of those students were coming from overseas into universities that were majorly white and they weren't, they might feel very kind of obvious about that and less at home. So I do think it is a really welcoming community, and it's one where difference is really supported.
When you joined De-Montfort University, moving to Leicester was, as you said, was lockdown started and then goes on. Part of that, what's the biggest challenge you face so far?
I think in a way it's meant that it feels to me as it only really started in September in one way. So I sort of feel like I've kind of lost 9 months. I'm only beginning really to get to know people and could have done that. But I mean, I don't think that sort of has stopped things. I mean, we've got challenges which are to deal with COVID, in that we're still seeing, obviously, coming out of that, you know, how we can teach again in the ways we used to, but also learn the positives from going online and the digital developments that we did. So, you know, that's been a sort of challenge. I think also, you know, our student recruitment's been affected as well by COVID, so balancing that out again. But also I think the major thing's probably been about finding a direction for the university, about thinking about how we do that and how we go forward. So a few different challenges in there, but you know, I think things are sort of going in the right direction, so sort of just a year over. And I suppose if I look back, I've still been able to achieve some of the things that I wanted to in terms of new strategy and new education programme that we're launching as well, which re-articulates and reimagines a lot of the way that we are teaching and the curriculum. So we've been able to do those things, but I think, you know, the big challenge is that people are just tired after COVID and apprehensive about going back into the world as if it's normal. And so working with those things has been a real challenge. It's really meant asking people to kind of dig deep and to keep on giving when they're tired and they can't always see the rewards.
De-Montfort University is very big and keen to get involved with the businesses, local leadership. But other side, we've been seeing so many small businesses has been ignored by various reasons. Do you have any policy to engage with them more?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of the work we do, and you know, within Leicestershire and Leicester, there are a lot of SMEs. I mean, they're predominantly quite small companies. So a lot of the work we do with our Business Incubation Centre is working with SMEs to do things like, we have a project at the moment with East Midlands Chamber of Commerce to upskill in terms of digital skills and work with small businesses for that, and around net zero and decarbonisation and those sorts of programmes. So we're specifically working with small businesses, but also thinking about how our students can benefit from understanding the opportunities that are around. It's interesting because actually, as a university, we've got the third highest number of startups coming from any university in the UK. So again, it's a real testament to the enterprise, entrepreneurship, but also that kind of Leicester spirit of being able to come up with things and to make them work.
How can you describe De-Montfort University?
Oh, I like to think, you know, we've got a very special community, so it's very friendly, but also we've got a thing that I just call DMU-ness, which I think is about a kind of spirit, a verve, that kind of energy, the entrepreneurial sort of side that I was just mentioning. So it is a real can-do place. And, you know, I know lots of other universities quite well, and I think there is a sort of sense of, you know, you come onto our campus, which in itself is a beautiful campus right by the city, and there's a real sense that things can be made to happen. And that's really magical and really special.
What's your message there? People are watching there anywhere around the world and they want to come and study at the De-Montfort University.
Oh yeah, well, have a look at the website first of all, and once you've seen the pictures of what we look at and get a flavour of some of the things that we're doing, you know, and we do fantastic work across business, across health, across the arts and creativity, and across science, technology, and I think those are, you know, really look at those, get a flavour for what we do, and then do please email in, make an inquiry, come and see us.
Before we go, what's your final word to our viewers?
I think my words are always about optimism, you know, that we can always find ways of achieving things, of succeeding, of doing the next thing. Break down your kind of goals and ambitions into little tiny parts and just do that little tiny part tomorrow and keep doing it step by step until you achieve the things that you want to achieve.
I heard from various different sources, we call tip-off, you're a good cook and you cook good curry. What's your favourite curry?
I really like cooking dal. That has to be my favourite. Yeah, and but I really like it with lots of, still with lots of seeds in it, not too ground up, but still kind of in there, so you can see them all and taste them all.
Katie, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for watching this episode. I hope you all enjoyed and learned something new from Katie. Every episode I say, the bigger game changer, be a strong. I will be back with a new guest, with new life story. Stay tuned. Let's talk more with Ramel Gulzar.